In accordance with Governor Baker's executive order permitting virtual meetings during the COVID pandemic, the Public Works Commission is conducting this public hearing today, June 10th, 2020 at 4 p.m. on the Zoom platform and in accordance with the town's policy directive and guidelines issued April 1st, 2020 and amended on May 7th. This meeting has been properly noticed with the town clerk and publicized in the Concord Journal. I ask that all Public Works commissioners, town staff, and presenters activate their video and mute their microphone unless they have something to say or are participating in committee dialogue. For members of the public, when I open the meeting to public comment, please either type in a question using the Q&A box in Zoom or select yourself in the participants list and select the raise hand so I will be able to recognize you. If you are recognized, please state your name and address. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website. I hereby call this meeting to order. All committee votes will be taken via roll call. When you make a motion or second a motion, please indicate your name. We will start with an attendance roll call of commissioners. When I announce your name, please reply. James Terry, present. Casey Winslow.
Present.
Andrew Boardman.
Present.
Peter Wallace.
Present.
Okay, we have all the commissioners here. The first item on our agenda is the review and approval of minutes of the May 13th, 2020 Public Works Commission meeting. Are there any comments? Hearing none, is there a motion for approval?
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second, Peter Wallace.
All in favor? Okay. Of those in favor, James Terry, yes. Casey Winslow,
Yes.
Andrew Boardman,
Yes.
Peter Wallace.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Next, we have a review of the proposed meeting dates. The meeting dates that we have expected in the future are July 8th, August 19th, and September 9th. In recent years, we have not met during the summer, but because we have missed the last 2 months, we think that at the present time, we will keep these dates open as possible meeting dates. At this time, being a little after 4 p.m., we are going to be having the water sewer rate public hearing. Is there a motion?
I hereby move to open the public hearing for the fiscal year 2010 water sewer rates.
Is there a second?
Second, Peter Wallace.
Okay, roll call vote.
Oh,
James Terry.
excuse me, sorry to interrupt. Andrew, that's fiscal year 21.
Oh, sorry, fiscal year 21.
Thank you.
Roll call vote. James Terry, yes. Casey Winslow.
Aye.
Andrew Boardman.
Yes.
Peter Wallace.
Yes.
Okay, let me turn over the meeting to Director Cathcart.
Okay, I'm unmuted. So I am going to be able to make a presentation. I'm going to use a PowerPoint. So I will go to that and you'll see I have share screen capabilities. I would ask Bob, Aaron, Melissa, if you could take your video off, so it's just the board on the screen. That's great. I'm going to open up the slideshow. Just give me a second to get things working. Okay, can everybody see the PowerPoint presentation? Great. Okay, and that's good. Peter's a veteran. We find the thumbs up or the waving hand is the best way of sort of getting attention and quickest as well as far as the group. So with that said, I want to go through, it's a little bit different format that we've seen in the past, where generally we do a FinCom hearing where we provide an overview of our water and sewer enterprise funds. And it occurred to me that, the board doesn't always have an opportunity to see that. And I think it's very important as far as when we're talking about rate setting, the foundation of the rate setting is really on the programs, both on the O&M services as well as capital improvement plans. And so I thought for context, it's very helpful. And so I pared it down a little bit so that we can kind of walk the board through some of the larger, broader budget issues that really inform, the setting of the rates. As you know, Public Works Commission is the official rate setting authority for Concord Public Works water and sewer divisions. With that said, I will walk through the kind of primary drivers. A lot of our costs are driven by things that are not necessarily the obvious infrastructure. A lot of our time and resources are spent for regulatory, statutory requirements. We have both drinking water regulations, Safe Drinking Water Act. We have Water Management Act issues we need to comply with. On the wastewater side, we have NIPD's discharge permits that we are obligated to meet. And those permits are being expanded to include costs and investments that are beyond the discharge, but also inclusive of the collection system, at least in the wastewater side. So, and the Water Management Act on the drinking water side does the same thing. It dictates certain expenses that we have for infrastructure improvements, not just where we would draw the water. The customer satisfaction are, working for Concord for 24 years, people expect good service. They pay for good service. We try to provide good service, whether it's safe, clean drinking water or very clean water that's discharged to the Concord River through our wastewater treatment plant. And we do a lot of work to try and invest in not just today, but future needs as well. Our planning horizon is not just the annual budget. It's 10, 20, 50 years where we sort of look at our planning horizon. As you can see in the water system, we have our infrastructure assets are valued about $24 million. We have a system that's mixed with surface water supply. You're well aware of the Nagog Pond resource. We have 6 groundwater supplies with various levels of treatment and technology involved. We have an advanced water treatment facility, 2 of them, that invest significant time. Deaconess, is one that has enhanced treatment, and then Nagog as well. 2 large reservoirs, which we're spending money on, and we'll be sharing a little bit of some of the improvements that are anticipated there. Over 130 miles of water main. That's infrastructure that has a life cycle of somewhere between 75 and 100 years. And when you look at the life cycle of that material, there's obviously a replacement. And if you do the math, in a perfect world, we replace over a mile of water main a year, or rehabilitate, depending on the technique, which is not inexpensive. Then you see the fire hydrants that we have, about 1,300 of those. As far as our operating expenditures, we do operate as a LICIC enterprise. We're actually a revolving fund. We predate the enterprise system in Massachusetts. But with that said, a significant amount of our operating expenses go to depreciation, as you can see. We also contribute money from our, for any support services we have in town for, staffing, whether it's billing and collection or finance or customer service or the NRC for support. We contribute to other general funds through the water as well as the sewer fund. And basically because they're real costs that are just realized in other departments for our support. The capital plan, I did mention we typically plan for 10, 20, 50 years. Generally this time of year, a little earlier, we look at what do we anticipate for our expenditures in FY21. There's really no surprises here, but you will look, Nagog treatment and the intake are, multi-million-dollar initiatives. We are proceeding with a bidding of the replacement of the intake pipe as we speak. Bids are expected to be in the next couple weeks, with construction to begin in the fall of this coming fall. And the $2.2 million for the treatment includes design costs as well for the actual treatment facility itself. I'll highlight the emerging contaminants. That is a placeholder of $1 million. And what that means is we have, I talked about the regulatory environment. We talked with the board before on the issue of PFAS, these polyfluorinated alkaline substances. These are something which the industry is wrestling with internationally. Massachusetts is going through a regulatory process as we speak, looking at developing standards ahead of what EPA would do. But the challenge is going to be if and when they do have standards, there may be some costs incurred. We're talking about very, very, very low levels of these compounds in the parts per trillion, where whatever standard they come with may dictate the difference between very little money spent or millions of dollars spent. So we have this as the anticipation of responding to this regulatory driver. The water main replacement, we're going to be putting a lot of money in towards the Peter Spring neighborhood. That's been planned for many years. We've actually got bids received. They were right on our estimates. We've got very good bidding environment. And then rehabs of the Nursnack Reservoir is going to be conducted. We've already started some work. And then we have sort of a significant expenditure that we're trying to dovetail with the light plant on any meter technology and enhancements. People always want to know what's our customer profile, who are we serving? And you're looking at close to 60% of our customer base is residential. When we set our rates, these are the, we have a residential rate, we have municipal rates, and then we have commercial rates. We don't differentiate the commercial versus the hospital correctional facilities, but it's important to understand the mix of use. We do serve some regional needs as well as the local, commerce as well. What's most important is not just how much, but what's the quality of service. And what you can see here is a survey that is done every couple of years. We'll be doing one, I'm sure, in 2021 as well, to get a pulse on all municipal services. Water and wastewater included in this survey. It's conducted through the townhouse. They provide us with results. But we're pleased to say that for the most part, people think, at least on the water service side, preponderance believe it's excellent service. You look at excellent and good, and it's over 95%. And of course, there's there's some people who are a little less satisfied, and then there's a very small percentage who just don't believe the service is as good. As far as the price, it's not just the level of service, but is it reasonable or good bargain? Again, preponderance of our customers do believe it's reasonably priced and a good bargain. One of the challenges we have, and when we set the rates and we have a discussion, is I'll remind you that we have a conservation-based rate structure that is imposed on the residential customers seasonally. It's to try and intentionally provide a cost signal to not use water in non-essential ways if you don't need to. Oftentimes it's that customer, the people who are getting using significant amounts of water, who see very high bills. We have bills of over $1,000, for a season, and I would imagine they do believe it's excessively priced, but they're using it for essentially non-essential purposes. You can see here a comparison. People like to know, how do we compare with our neighbors and similar socioeconomic communities with similar kinds of properties and profiles? You can see where we're competitive. I'd say the industry in general is looking at, most systems are raising rates to comply with the regulatory requirements. that we realize, as well as the realization that you need to invest in this aging infrastructure, which we've talked about in the past, where water mains need to be replaced or rehabilitated, pump stations need to be replaced or rehabilitated. And when you do so, you tend to be doing it in a better way than they were originally installed, especially when it comes to the pump stations and treatment facilities. Customer service. We put a lot of energy and investment in trying to improve our customer service. We have monthly billing that we work closely with the Municipal Light Plant and the Broadband Service Group to go to monthly billing for all rate classes. We've combined our bills for convenience, so they're not mailed out separately. They go in one bundle. People can receive them electronically. People can have electronic access to their own files and history, and we're sort of working on a relatively new platform. Bob Hill of our staff has been intimately involved with this conversion process and working with the new customer service group that's housed in the Municipal Light Plant, but we pay for some of those services, and in fact the level of service has gone up and the cost for that support has gone up as well. Dwelling unit allowance, I just make note, when we set rates, we try to do it in a fair and equitable way. And I believe in the memo that we issued regarding the rates, I do call out that we're trying to, in the past, a single family lot would have been eligible for one single family rate meter. And the reason we had that is you can have large lots with a single family that can have accessory use, pool houses, other activities, guest homes, and they're sort of a more of a luxury to have. And our rate structure, especially seasonally, is intended to try and make sure that the people who don't have the wherewithal and are trying to be mindful of their use don't really get hit with high costs. And so we thought that was unfair to have a large parcel with multiple kinds of activities getting multiple benefits of that low rate. That has changed recently with the zoning interests and planning interests to increase residential density in certain parts of town. So we now have an allowance where 2 units that are separate dwellings on a small parcel that may not be subdivided would be entitled to a single family allowance per unit. So that's something that we've modified to just conform with some of the needs we see throughout the community. And finally, as far as the residential rate increase, it is again informed based on our operating expenses and projected expenses, as well as our capital expenses we projected over a 10-year period. If you were to look at our budget book, for instance, you'll see we do a 10-year pro forma where we list all of our costs, all of our expenditures, and our interest is to ensure that whatever rates we propose to the board, the intent is that it will not have a rate shock, where we hold off and have wide swings in our rate structure or rate cost of water service. And I will actually go back to this trend here, where you see the orange line, sort of talks about a fairly uniform, increase as far as the, the cost of water, but we tend to try and avoid, significant rate shocks, and that's where we've proposed 5% for this fiscal year. You can see the impact on the typical, residential customer is about $25 per year, and of course we have a discount rate structure for those systems, people who have economic needs. There's a metric that's used. It's a similar one that the light plant would use as well, so that if there needs to be some sort of accommodation, I think we have 50 to 60 customers who actually get a discounted rate on that base rate. The general service, again, we talked about sort of our different classes. You can see, again, there's a 5% increase at the base level. And I will say, if you go back to this slide, step 1 for residential is to see 59 $0.059 dollars per cubic foot. It's the same rate as the base level for commercial operations. And we have different steps in commercial. It's year-round where we're looking for conservation and efficiency. And our rate structure is set with two steps where small commercial offices, they're really not high water users. They don't have a lot of opportunity to conserve. They typically don't go into a second step, for instance, but larger operations, we have different kinds of commercial facilities are incentivized to really look at their overall operations and figure out ways where they can reduce water. Even with larger commercial facilities, we have rates that are separate for the cooling water. And we try to get more customized when the end user gets a little bit more complex. So that is the water rate. I can continue through the sewer, and then we can have a conversation on all the rates. If you, I'm open, Jim, to your thoughts. Just to keep through the sewer. Or
Yeah, why don't you keep going?
Okay. On the sewer, it's important to understand water is 95% of Concordians are served with water. On the wastewater, as you may recall, only about 34% of our community is served in the downtown areas. And what you can see really kind of, in the downtown up here in the locust map, the green area represents the sewer collection main. So if there's not a green line on this plan, you're not getting municipal sewer. It's a smaller, it's an enterprise system. Less people contribute to the fund. The costs are generally even more expensive in the wastewater arena, not so much on the collection side, but on the treatment side. But when you look at the infrastructure, our assets, even though it's only a third of the community served, is just over $15 million. The most significant asset that we have is the advanced wastewater treatment plant on Bedford Street. That's the facility that all the wastewater is collected and pumped to that, where it gets treated and discharged to the Concord River. You have two large pumping stations, the Assabet and the Lowell Road Station, I'll talk about in a minute as far as some improvements. We have 6 neighborhood lift stations, so you get gravity collection in neighborhoods based on topography. They go to a pump station. There's cost to maintain and service the pump station, and it lifts the water to eventually to either Assabet and Lowell, and eventually the wastewater treatment facility. We have about 34 miles of collection main. Interesting on the collection main, a lot of it's very old. A lot of it was installed in the 1900s. We have not had a program for replacement like we have in the water side and the distribution. There's a reason. The distribution is under high pressure. When it fails big. We have water main breaks, interruptions of service. It can be, very significant. On the sewer side, you have leakage, and you have infiltration, inflow that goes into the pipes. The real cost is not so much the integrity of the pipe, it's the cost to treat the water at the wastewater treatment plant, where groundwater or stormwater can get into the system. So we're spending more and more money to try and eliminate that. And then the manholes are our access to that collection system. It's very interesting as far as our operating expense. Most of our expense, if you look at this pie chart, are in depreciation because of the assets, the value of the assets. And the life term really on the wastewater treatment plant is not the 100 years like we talked about with the pipes. It's on the order of 30, 40 years. So that depreciation is much higher. In contract management, we actually have a third party, a contractor who runs the treatment facility over on Bedford Street. So you're looking at O&M expenditures of about $3 million a year. And on our capital plan, the biggest improvements we're looking at, we're in the middle of, is the upgrades to the Lowell Road and the Assabet Ave pump station. You see to the tune of about $2.2 million for those improvements. There's some other kind of significant capital expenses, but the most significant one for 21 are really those upgrades. They were last improved in the mid 80s. So they've certainly served their useful life, and really they're at the very end of it. So we're doing it just in the nick of time. Again, it's interesting. As I was looking at the slides, I was trying to find what about the level of service, and I realized they don't ask people, how do you feel your wastewater service is? I think the expectation is you flush and it's gone. You're not really interested in knowing too much about the quality or anything. So it's not part of our survey, but they do include the price. And you can see there is, most people think it's reasonably priced. As I say, the wastewater world is a little bit more expensive, but for the most part, people believe it's reasonably priced or a good bargain. And some people with excessively priced, could be even influenced by some of the fees, for instance, the sewer improvement fee, where they've had to pay for some capacity or something. So I'm not surprised with this particular assessment. I will say we have a very good record as far as service or main backups, for instance. So the quality service is really not challenged at all. When you look for comparable communities, you can see we're very competitive with similar kind of socioeconomic communities. You see Bedford, Lexington, Wellesley comparison is generally what we use. As far as the impact, it's a little bit more difficult to sort of talk about. On the residential customer, we can see it's only about $14 a year. We're looking at a 2% increase. That's on the user fee. And again, sewer customers, about a third of our customers, of the water customers. And there's no proposed change on the sewer improvement fee. That's the fee that is fairly, it's a significant fee on the expanding new users when they expand their use or have a new use. So in essence, that is the overview. And I think what I'm going to do, unless I need to go back, is I'm going to get out of I'm going to stop the shared so everybody can see each other. And Jim, open it up to you for questions, comments.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alan. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners? Okay. I'm not seeing any. In that case, are there any questions from the public? Chris, are there any public participants here?
No, for attendees who've called in, you can hit *9 on your phone to raise your hand or type in a question in the Q&A box. I'm not seeing any.
Okay, I don't see anything in the Q&A box.
Yep.
Okay, in that case, Andrew, is there a motion you'd like to make?
Yes. I, Andrew Boardman, hereby move to close the public hearing for the fiscal year 21 water sewer rates.
Second.
Is there a second?
Peter Wallace.
You second that, Peter?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, roll call vote. James Terry, aye. Casey Winslow,
Aye.
Andrew Boardman,
Aye.
Peter Wallace.
Aye.
Okay, the rate hearing is now closed. Is there a motion with regard to the sewer rates and water
Yeah.
rates?
I, Andrew Boardman, hereby move to approve the water rate schedules and also the sewer rate schedules as presented and as described in the fiscal year 2021 water and sewer rate schedules memo dated May 26, 2020, prepared by the water sewer management analyst and issued by the Public Works Director.
Is there a second?
Second. Peter Wallace.
Thank you. Roll call vote. All those in favor of the motion? James Terry, yes. Casey Winslow,
Yes.
Andrew Boardman,
Yes.
Peter Wallace.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate all of this sort of negotiated ways of getting through things here. The next item on our agenda is a discussion regarding the integrated water management plan. And again, Alan, I think that's probably, you're going to give us the most information.
Okay, very good. I am going to, just for a short minute, I'm going to put something up on the screen. I'm going to do another share screen. If I can see this document. Interesting. Well, maybe I will not do that. That's interesting. I have an image that I can't bring up. But basically, the conversation here is, this is an ask of the board to support the town's request for an MVP. That's the mass, vulnerability preparedness grant, where EEA will issue various grants to communities that are looking at either planning activities relating to climate change, or even they even support infrastructure improvements. There has been a multiple step process that the town of Concord has gone through to qualify to make these requests for the grants. In this particular case, we've been working with the sustainability coordinator, Kate Hanley, who has had a number of venues and workshops with various town staff and stakeholders in the community. People, everybody's so still. I thought I might have frozen. Am I talking?
Yes.
I saw no movement. Okay. That has happened. I apologize. So the town has, and we've talked about this approach in the past, where it's not just climate resiliency, but it's preparedness for extreme weather, whether it's flood activities or droughts, which really have a potential impact on the essential services of the community. And as I mentioned earlier, when we do planning, design, engineering sorts of things in our universe, which is public works, we look at stormwater infrastructure and management and regulations. We deal with drinking water regulations and capacity and withdrawal and demand related issues. On the wastewater, we look at how to eliminate stormwater from entering the wastewater stream, and then the treatment then discharges to the river. And as I've talked about, it's a system, it's a water cycle. And communities are starting to wake up to look at identifying how do they strategically plan and invest in their communities, whether it's through green infrastructure with stormwater recharge without what they call gray pipes or hard pipes, or wastewater solutions that do not centralize but have small neighborhood treatment facilities, or drinking water, where you're taking water from one watershed like Magog and you're bringing it into another in the Assabet or Sudbury. And the town has identified an interest and a need to understand that better. I've been a huge advocate of this sort of planning for many, many years, because it helps inform where would we spend money? How do we make sure that if we're looking at managing the water resource, do we spend millions of dollars at a wastewater treatment plant, maybe with a minimal return on that investment, versus maybe spending some money that we've collected for wastewater, but we can remove phosphorus up in the Assabet watershed, through stormwater. And it allows us to be a little bit more creative and potentially work with regulators and ask them to be more creative if we have a plan. So I've been working with Kate as well as staff. We have really good, our town engineer, Steve Dukran, was considering these sorts of things when he was working up in Nashua. Aaron McCloskey, who has had the responsibilities of stormwater, wastewater, drinking water, understands the concept. He's our highway ground superintendent. Every day his crew goes out and is touching and managing that infrastructure and the surface, and how they treat and manage it matters, as well as Melissa Simoncini, who's done it, just through the water side, naturally. It's just sort of a natural interest. So this particular grant, I expect Public Works to play a leading role in it, while working with other stakeholders in Concord, and we're working with Delia Kay at the NRC, Kate Hanley, Elizabeth Newman at Planning. These are all the people who are going to be engaged in this. And so staff is looking forward to having the services. It's not an inexpensive undertaking. We haven't done it to date because of that. But I see, based in the industry, people are starting to understand the value. What we're hoping for is to work with stakeholders, including watershed groups, regional regulators. I've reached out to MAPC and regional planning because they're very interested in this, to try and get a letter of support from them. Because we think if we can do this right in Concord, it can be a model, but more importantly, it can inform big picture investments over the next 20, 50 years. And without it, we continue to just do the same old, same old. And this board has heard me talk about this in the past, but this is an opportunity to hopefully have the state work with us and partner with us and support the planning it's a 2-year cycle. So we phased the project so there's sort of a framing of the first year and then really going in detail to develop a plan in the second year. And we've been working with a consultant who's been doing this in a few systems larger, for the most part, none the size of Concord that I'm aware of. But we've talked about this in the past, but we're looking for your support, a letter of support for the grant. And that's kind of what I'd love to hear any comments, thoughts on the process, but it's, it's early, it's to get money so we can do the planning and participate. And that's the ask at this point.
Okay, so as Alan has talked to me about this, his proposal needs to be in by a week from tomorrow. And he would like a letter of support from the commissioners if we feel that this is something that makes a lot of sense. I told him that personally, I thought it did, but and I suspected that the other members would also. We've been working a little bit on a draft letter of support, which if the commissioners would be comfortable with me finalizing that and working with Alan to get that done, that would be the appropriate thing to consider. Are there questions or comments?
I strongly support it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like a great plan and a great use of resources and definitely leveraging some skills we have. It seems like win-win-win across the board.
Okay. Any comment, Casey?
Do we need a motion?
What?
Or-
We don't need one, but I think it's a good idea. Why don't you go forward, Peter?
I move we support the director's initiative as he described in a letter.
Is there a second? Okay. Okay, we have to go through the formal things. All those in favor of the motion? James Terry, yes. Casey Winslow,
Sorry, yeah, aye.
yes. Andrew Borgman,
Yes.
Peter Wallace.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. That's unanimous. I think we have one final item on the agenda tonight, and that is director's report. We haven't really heard about what's been going on for the last 2 or 3 months, and so I think Alan's got some interesting information for us.
Alan, excuse me for interrupting, but we do have that image if you want me to try and pull it up, the integrated.
No, it's okay. I think we're good. Votes had, it was a nice image of showing sort of a Venn diagram of stormwater, drinking water, wastewater, but you guys get it. It's just sometimes it's, thank you, Anna. I will try to, now with the director's report, I will take the screen over and try and launch, and that's the right word. This is, I will say kind of a preamble. Initially, when we first started the COVID response, where we were essential services and we're all scrambling to figure out what are the services we're going to provide, how we can conduct our routine business, the town manager worked quickly to try and get Zoom capabilities for critical meetings and executive functions, that sort of thing. And I'm sort of expanding. I've seen how the NRC has been working with Zoom very effectively. And I thought it would be, if I'm going to, take your time to do some of the important things like the water sewer rate hearing, it's also a great opportunity to keep you up to date on some of the activities. And so, my interest was to just give you an update. If people talk to you, you'll have a sense of what's going on. And these are the sort of more topical issues. And I do have staff. I've seen anybody who might, if I can't answer a question, I've seen Melissa Simoncini is on. If Anna's on, Aaron McCloskey, and Steve Dukran if you have questions that I can't answer. So anyway, the most important thing is, and it's worth knowing as a commission, that there's an interest. We have gone with a new team. We'll actually say, I'm pleased to report that Melissa Simoncini has been promoted to be our environmental program coordinator dealing with trash, recycling, and sustainability issues for Public Works. So she's been engaged over the last few months, really helping us get our feet back on the ground, with Anna Trout being just the foundation of institutional knowledge to help. Between the two of them and working with Nancy Carroll, they've continued trash and recycling with essential services. Has been a huge service, and it has gone without a hitch with waste management doing contract ops. With the only challenge we've had is a routine service for the downtown commercial area is to provide barrels and recycling accommodations for the general public. And over the last 2 months, we've been in this odd transition of going from a ghost town where nobody was out and there was no need, to spring, and all of a sudden, people started going, needing to stretch the legs and get out, to kind of a slow opening of different businesses. So it's been a hard thing to try and anticipate, but most important, it's not going to be routine this year because the town manager is working with restaurant owners and food service industry to try and look at outdoor dining and patio kind of services. And so what we're seeing is people are doing a lot of takeout, and the takeout's increasing volume in different areas of town. And people may take out and they'll eat out as well, but we're just trying to catch up to where are the needs and how do we accommodate them with the municipal support as well as the private needs as well. So that has been raised as an issue. Melissa is working with Anna and Waste Management to try and get our arms around that, but I thought it was important for the board to be aware of that. And it was basically the lack of familiarity to begin with, coupled with very irregular use patterns. We'll be probably spending a little bit more money down on the downtown areas to maintain the level of service people expect. And I'm very pleased to report Cambridge Turnpike continues to proceed based on design and schedule, at least the reset schedule. This is a significant credit goes to Steve Dukran, the town engineer. He came in at a time where there was lots of kind of uncertainties and questions going on as far as the relationship with the contractor was challenged. The schedule had been delayed, and Steve has been able to sort of take the lead on this initiative, working with his new engineering staff to get work proceeding. There's been very few upsets. This is an image of the actual new bridge looking back towards, this is the landscaping or the nursery.
Mildred Farm.
Mildred Farm.
Millbrook Farm.
And on the other direction, you can see we're getting close to opening. Now you don't see the guardrails and walkways and that sort of thing, which are scheduled to be installed shortly, but we are on schedule. And again, a lot of credit goes to Steve and his team, which is sort of keeping this project moving. The neighborhood has been very accepting. It's been a challenge for them. But we now have two contractors. Carnes is doing 2 of the phases, and JTI is another contractor who's come back, and they're going to be setting sidewalks and curbing and that sort of thing in some of the other stretches. So positive note. Another thing I'm very proud of, This is the rotary. This is an image of the where we had that large water main break. It's now going back to the end of last summer. And because it was in Mass Highway area, because it was such a disturbance to this on-ramp onto the rotary, we were working with Mass Highway to restore this. They were doing pavement up in that area. And I'll say Aaron McCloskey and the highway group, we're finally working as a team. Water, sewer guys took care of the trench. They repaired the pipe. They got the services back online. Aaron and his team stepped in to complement with, okay, now it's the treatment, it's the road. He took the lead and really did a great job coordinating with Mass Highway, third-party contractors to get this work done. And so that repair has been completed, and just kind of shows the value of using the right people in public works to do the right work, and just the teamwork involved. And Aaron and his team are doing kind of repairs, of roadways, throughout town. This just happened to be more of a high visibility project. Also with the, this is the landfill, and as you recall, we opted to continue to provide services in early spring, even when there was questions on what is essential and non-essential services. We knew people were doing a lot of yard work and needing a relief. We had a very creative plan to allow them to, in a controlled way, bring their clippings, debris to the yard waste to the landfill, but it was on a Friday and Saturday because the setup was kind of took more time and effort to set up and break down. But we've now, people have been behaving. They understand the rules of engagement. And I believe, Anna, if I'm not mistaken, it's Wednesday evening. Again, we're back to the regular hours. Can you remind
Yes.
me what the hours are?
Wednesday 3 to 6, Saturday 9 to 3.
Thank you. So we're back to regular with people, sort of learning and kind of working with us to continue to have the service. And, and I think we've heard a lot of positive response from customers, just appreciating the fact that this service was opened. And while they were unable to go to Boston, they were able to do yard work, and a lot of people's yards are looking pretty good right now. You can see the compost site where we mix the debris and make this material available to Concord residents to enhance their gardens and yards. The highway has started in earnest on the street sweeping. That's sort of the perennial, usually in May after the winters, they're sort of conducting the street sweeping, usually earlier in the mornings. And I think, it just sort of talks about some of the equipment that we maintain. Public Works is going to be challenged in the coming years with looking at some of the climate interests and action groups in Concord to look at our fleet and look at our operations and try and become more efficient. And it is important to note that our equipment is so specialized. I think we're going to have a challenge, but we're going to try and be up to the commitment of looking at what we can do to go all electric with an understanding that some of the equipment is going to be a little more difficult than others. Part of under Aaron's domain as a tree warden is we have shade trees where he'll do removals, inspections, and trimming. He was very helpful in working with water sewer, where part of our Nurse Neck Hill Reservoir improvement was a significant amount of work was required to remove trees that had been allowed to grow on the embankment of this very important resource for 50 years. And it's almost embarrassing. I've been here too long. They almost were a part of the normal landscape, but they should never have been allowed to grow. They become a real hazard if they fall. And Aaron and his crew has been pretty busy all spring because of the unusual storms and trees down in response. And we have large limbs that can come down, the trees can come down. So you can see some of the heavy equipment behind the screen area that we have. That's sort of before. You can see, the amount of work that was done all around the perimeter of this reservoir. And I will say, It's been a bit of a challenge for the residents up in the Nurse-Nack Hill neighborhood, the direct abutters. We've been working with them to try and explain that A, why we're doing this work, and B, we've committed to working with a landscaper to try and look at what is an appropriate landscaping plan for this area, so it's easy to maintain, it's natural, and you can see some of the screening that we put up so that when the trees came down, they had a more obvious view of the actual dome itself. And the screening and the landscaping is a commitment that we have to try and minimize the impact on the direct abutters. There's probably a half dozen or so that would have been affected by this. Going back to, here's one of the new mowers and some of the specialized equipment. This was something that had been budgeted for, I think, 2 fiscal years ago. Aaron is really taking the reins on looking at our equipment needs. And for some reason, we had been delinquent in replacement. And when you're delinquent in replacement, you end up just spending money on repair and services that aren't being provided. So his full complement of crew are really having at the grounds, the parks, working with the recreation department, NRC to support some of their needs as well. On the water side, we had a water main break. This was on Memorial Day weekend at about 5 o'clock at night after my last Zoom meeting, and I was ready for the long weekend. I'm not kidding. I was literally just done and get a call at about 5:15. Looks like we have a water main break on Haywood Street. And again, it just shows the nature of our crew. We have 3 guys in within a half hour. They were able to isolate the pipe. And it's unusual, but this pipe connected, was a connector pipe between Lexington Road and Walden. In essence, no services were off it. So they were able to isolate it and then have a planned replacement. And the planned replacement is just so much better as far as any potential impact on traffic, if there is, the cost of emergency service, all that sort of thing. So they were able to schedule it, do it during the day and safely. And, it's just, again, kind of the nature of the beast, but there really is never a holiday when there's a water main break. Lowell Road Pump Station, talked about those improvements. This is the conduit that is being installed. This is where codes and regulations can really change the nature of a project. We presently have in that small brick building on Lowell Road, a emergency generator. You need to have one. It's essential. If the power goes out, we have to continue to pump the wastewater. We can no longer keep the emergency generator as part of this rehab in the facility. So we looked all over the site, and a combination of whether it's a building code or HDC or wetlands, we had no place to put the emergency generator. And we ended up having to put it on the backside of 135 at a significant cost. And it's really not ideal, but it's necessary. It just goes to show, the cost of sometimes, we bottle ourselves into, codes and regulations and, things like this. That's why projects cost more now than they did, 30, 40 years ago. It's the nature of the beast, but a significant effort just to get this generator sited and constructed. But the important thing is it is being done. When we're complete with this, the entire mechanical, plumbing, electrical, instrumentation systems will be improved at both Lowell Road and Asset Pit Station. We have D&C Construction is the contractor doing the work so far. They're working very well with us. Our own crew, these are some of the handyman things I like to show at some of the stations. Spalding of a hatch. This is to get a large pump and motor out of a well. The crews just are kind of, they're jacks of all trade. They'll go from this to working on the instrumentation in any given day to water quality and treatment. It's just remarkable. You may have heard up at NAGOG, that we've had some challenges as far as the protection of the Concord land. It's open space. And what hasn't been built out for residential and high density is open space, primarily protected by Concord, and it's become more attractive. And while we have, tried to continue to be a good neighbor, sometimes the people who visit don't necessarily heed all, precautionary measures. Apparently, there was a small campfire that was started, a fire that ended up taking, and sort of taking root and requiring Acton Fire Department to respond to a fire on our property that was caused by some, unauthorized activity. And up here in the corner is a fairly substantial fire pit. I'm not going to go into the details of where it was located, but it was on Concord land. And, in essence, it's a bit of a challenge of having this remote land without the protections that we've sort of volunteered we needed in the past. And not everybody is necessarily, working with us. Passive recreation is one thing, but, fires, fishing, swimming, it's just unacceptable. So with that said, that is the director's report. I will stop sharing, get the board back. Jim, so that's...
Okay. Are there any questions for Alan with regard to his reports? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask if the commissioners have any comments or questions that have been brought up as a result of discussions with citizens in Concord.
I just have one anecdote. I had a neighbor who had a tree that was in rough shape. They called the town. They were very excited. It was in the public way. They came and they took it down immediately because it was a safety hazard. They couldn't speak more highly of the town. So it's just a positive note for the tree crews.
That's great. Thanks, Andrew. In that case, I'm going to ask if there are any public comments with regard to Public Works. Oh, Alan?
Before we go there, I just wanted to circle around on the schedule for the board. I didn't get a chance. We moved so quickly. You guys are so efficient on the schedule outlined. I know it's summer and we typically take the summer off. And as Jim mentioned, because we've missed some meetings, there may be some needs to do some, whether it's policy or an appeal or something that's time sensitive. That's why we have it on the books. I will say, I don't know about July, but August, we will likely be reviewing town meeting related activities. So we'll have more information at that point. I would like to bring that before the board in August. And the time, the 4 p.m., we've seen it being used in different venues and different Zoom meetings. And if that can be accommodated, I don't know if the board has an issue with that. I told Jim, it's kind of convenient, but we're not beholden to that. But I think if we did Wednesdays, the second Wednesday is sort of a routine. But I even know the select board is continuing to meet at 4 o'clock. They've now moved from Thursday to Monday, the regular day of the week, but they've gone from 7 to 4. And if you're okay with that model, I'd propose we continue, but I'm open to your thoughts.
Okay. Are there any comments with regard to this regarding from Peter or Andrew or Casey? Is it okay?
I like it.
Okay.
Possible once we get a little crazier back into our lives, though, 4 o'clock we might.
Correct. I mean,
more conflict.
it may well be that we'll be back to regular meetings at that time too.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. So I think the information to you, Alan, is that as of now, we're comfortable with the 4 o'clock meeting, but we may have to consider going back to the evening at a later time.
Great, thank you.
And Alan, we
Okay.
have it scheduled for the third Wednesday, which is the 19th. Is that correct?
Is it
In August.
in August?
Yes.
Yes.
I would actually, I thought it was the second. I'm sorry, but we can take a look at that and we'll circle back to the board, make sure when we can have a quorum, because I know it's the middle of the summer, so I think we can have some flexibility. If the board can weigh in, I'm open to either.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that. I didn't catch that.
Okay. So Chris, are there any citizen comments that you're aware of?
So attendees, if you could just hit *9. to raise your hand if you want to publicly comment or type in your question in the Q&A box. I am not seeing any comments.
Okay.
So I was
Um,
wondering, Alan, if you might want to give us, I know we talked about Cambridge Turnpike, but it just seems like that's the question you get over and over again, you know, in terms of like completion dates and projected.
Sure. I will let Steve Dukran. I think if you're on, can you unmute and sort of just give the board a little better sense of, thank you. And there he is. Excellent.
Yes, thank you. Steve Dukran, town engineer. Particularly about dates, we're shooting to get the project done by fall, probably late fall. We have the typical challenges when it comes to this type of construction. Challenges, you know, but when you discover something that you didn't know was there, so you got to work around that with change orders and so on. And then the other kinds of issues, you know, we have to deal with all the residents, and each one will call us. We would go through and work through issues with them. So it's moving along like Alan described earlier. We're making a lot of progress despite the conditions, given you know the delays we had before, and then the COVID-19 issues. We have the contractors who have to conform to state requirements, requiring you know safety practices and so on. All of those things have added you know challenges to moving the project along. But we're shooting for getting all the work done in the fall. This week we completed all the curbing. If you go out there, you'd see curbing on both sides of the street, all the way to the culverts that have been replaced. So that was a tremendous amount of progress, and you'll see sidewalks being paved within the next couple of weeks as well. We also in the process of moving the wires from the overhead lines into the conduits. Services are being done in the first part of the project from the museum area down to the farm stand. Once those are in the ground, the poles can be removed and final paving for that area will be done. So if you want more specifics, I can go into more detail.
Any more questions, Casey? Specifics?
No, that was very helpful. So basically we're
Okay.
talking about a late fall completion because people were concerned about the COVID-19 and how that might have affected everything. So that's what the feedback I've been getting. So if you can
I'll
say.
just volunteer, Casey, that Steve is kind of not hedging his bet, but completion means different things to different people. You know, there's the people who will be traveling, and then there's the people whose property may have some touch up or that sort of thing. So, but I think the real travel way is going to be.
I think the opening, you know, being able
Exactly,
to pass through.
exactly. And I will just note some of the challenges have been overcome with the light plant, you know, being very supportive. We work very closely with them. You know, Dave Wood and his team have been, you know, really helpful, both on helping with the temporary relocation of the utility poles, working with Verizon and helping us with that. And we've had water sewer crew helping his crew with some of their underground electric to move things along. So the town departments are, you know, really kind of working well. It's very nice to see that and get the support.
The bridge itself, once the rails are up, we can see the bridge opening by end of July. That's the bridge at the farm stand. However, the culvert work over the Crosby Pond will continue for a while longer.
Right. Thanks, Steve.
Welcome.
Hearing nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move
Yes,
to
Andrew,
adjourn.
go ahead. Is there a second?
I move to adjourn.
Second, Peter Wallace.
Okay, roll call vote. Jim Terry, yes. Casey Winslow,
Yes.
Andrew Boardman,
Yes.
Peter Wallace.
Yes. Well
Thank you,
done,
everybody.
everyone.
Okay, success for our first webinar.
Yeah, thank you for the first Zoom meeting.
Yes,
Appreciate it. We'll see you soon, right?
right.
Yes.
Okay.
We hope so. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good night.